Welcome to the 4th annual DEFY VEDS Scientific Meeting. We're very excited to have everybody joining us today, and we have a very large turnout for this meeting. So we'll be going over some guidelines for the Zoom meeting as well in just a moment. I am Katie Wright. I'm the director of the VEDS movement, which is a division of the Marfan Foundation specifically dedicated to individuals with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. We also have Josephine Grima, our Chief Science Officer of the foundation, with us today. And Joe, if you want to just say hi and just let everybody know who you are.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I want to thank everybody for your participation today. I will be the timekeeper. So for the speakers, I'll put in the chat when you have 1 minute left. We just want to try to keep everything on time and the meeting moving forward. And this is really very, very exciting for us to have so many people joining us and sharing their research for this rare disease community. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you want to check out information we have available at thevedsmovement.org, I encourage you to visit it and reach out to us. We do have lots of resources available, not only for patients, but also for healthcare professionals, including opportunities for CME. We have studies listed for patient participation. So if you would like a study listed, you can always reach out to us, and lots of other opportunities to engage. So we really encourage you to check that out. Virtual meeting guidelines. So as we've said, there are almost 200 people registered for today. I don't know if all of you will be here all at once throughout the entire day, but it would be very helpful if you could remember to mute when you're not speaking, so we avoid any kind of feedback when people are presenting. That would be extremely helpful. There will be multiple presentations. If you have questions for speakers, please put them into the chat box, and then we will call you to ask your question. The moderators will be doing that. You will be asked to unmute yourself to ask your question, and then please remember to mute yourself again when you are finished asking your question. That'd be super helpful to us on the back end trying to manage such a large meeting. We do want to encourage collaboration as much as possible. So we've kept it as a meeting format instead of a webinar. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording has already started. The exception will be any presenters who have told us they did not wish for their presentation to be recorded. We will be pausing the recording at that time, but all other presentations will be recorded, and we will be making them available following the meeting sometime next week. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Weimer, the CEO of the Marfan Foundation. I'll hand it over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you for your leadership of the VEDS movement. We're really fortunate to have you in this special role, and it's an exciting time, as everyone knows, for our VEDS activities. Also, special thanks to our Chief Scientific Officer, Josephine Grima, for her support and guidance of the VEDS movement. Joe has been a vital partner in building this division of the foundation. If you are not familiar with the Marfan Foundation, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary. And we are now home to the Louise Dietz Foundation, the VEDS movement, and also the Gentac Alliance. We also believe we have one of, if not the finest professional advisory board and larger medical community in the business, and an absolute extraordinary patient community. Welcome to our friends and colleagues from Fight VEDS, the EDS Society, the VEDS Collaborative, and Annabelle's Challenge. There are also a number of members here today from the CERN, our partner in last fall's E3 International Conference, which had over 3,000 registrants from 75 countries. I now have the honor and pleasure to introduce a friend, engaging member of our board of directors, and the spiritual leader of today's DEFY Foundation's 4th annual VEDS Scientific Meeting, Dr. Tony Yasick. Tony?
Great, Mike, thanks. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you all being here. And I'd like to extend our welcome from the DEFY Foundation as well to all of you to today's 4th edition meeting. We're as excited as everyone else about today's meeting. And just to give you a little background on the DEFY organization, I think many of you know our story, but we're a nonprofit originally that from the greater Philly area. We're really dedicated to raising funds and awareness towards our mission, which is living fearlessly and finding a cure for vascular Ehlers-Danlos. So we're really excited to have you all here. Our goals for the meeting today really remain the same as when we originally partnered with our chairs in Amsterdam in 2018. We were really looking for ways to support them in their work, and their suggestion was that we develop and support a forum for sharing clinical and research data, recommendations, and developments. And hopefully that forum would facilitate discussion, collaboration within the VEDS clinical and scientific communities, and eventually encourage support really of next generation scientists. So that's our goals today, really to get the science out there and all of you scientists and clinicians and researchers talking. We really feel like today's program does all that. It represents kind of an evolution of our approach, where we're letting kind of had a call for abstracts to let the science drive the agenda today. So we're excited to hear where that leads our discussion and where that brings you all into the mix. So my job, I think, is also to introduce the chairs of our meeting. Really, this event would not have come about without their fine work in the field, and it really wouldn't have come about with their willingness to lead from the beginning. So the real leaders from the beginning of this meeting have been Dr. Hal Dietz, Dr. Peter Byers, and Dr. Xavier Juenemaitre. And I think my role is to pass you all along to Dr. Peter Byers next. Thank you all for being here. Very excited.
I know that all of you are in different time zones, and for me, the sun is just peeking up over the horizon in Seattle. Good morning from Seattle, and good evening, good afternoon, good whatever it is, or wherever you are. I actually like to call this the almost annual meeting, because we started, I think, in 2014 or 2015, and Melanie Pepin, then a genetic counselor with us in Seattle, was a key person in putting things together, and brought together about 25 people in Chicago. The meeting was modeled after a meeting that had been developed by the OI Foundation, the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation, yearly and funded by the Bookbinder Family Foundation there, that I think made a difference in terms of how, one, people interacted, and two, the development of a scientific cohort within the scientific and medical community. Scientific and medical are not meant to be different in that context for the OI Foundation. And we hope that would be the outcome for these meetings. At that time, relatively small meetings, bringing together the people that we knew who were active in the field. I think that it has succeeded, and then seeing this, the evolution of this, and as Tony indicated, the change in the format, one from which we identified and invited people to come and talk, and had a lot of open conversation over a day and a half. This one's a little bit shorter, and is modeled at Hal's suggestion, actually, on the way in which the international meeting of the Marfan Foundation was organized in Amsterdam, and brought people to the meeting with their interests. So I think we have a very interesting, that's a terrible word to use in this context, I understand, but meeting that will excite people, and I think will bring people together as time goes on. As we say at the end of some of our holiday celebrations, next year and we have always hoped that next year would be in Paris, and perhaps that will be the case, and we'll hear more about that later. So I think the next is Xavier, add yours.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I'm very proud to be and pleased to be among you, and Peter Byers, Hal Dietz, and Tony, and all the people that who have organized this meeting. It's 4 p.m. in Paris in the afternoon. As you see behind me, Paris has changed a bit, but it's not a real Paris. We are running a big operation on rare vascular disease for more than 10 years now, with a referral center, National Referral Center for VEDS, especially with the Department of Genetics, and also lab of research, clinical research, but also basic research. We are trying to do our best to progress in the clinical care and also for future avenues in this very important and dynamic research that everyone is trying to do all along the planet. So I'm very pleased to be there and to listen the several communication of different centers and try to participate to it. Thank you again. It's time now for all to say the last word.
So hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It's a thrill to be here. You know, this morning I was reflecting back on the last meeting and really had tremendous excitement about the progress that has been made. That has led to a sense of, a new sense, I think, of optimism and hope in this field. So I am super excited to learn from you and with you today about the newest advances. I would like to specifically acknowledge the critical involvement and participation of the DEFY Foundation and the Marfan Foundation VEDS movement in making this meeting a reality. I'd also like to acknowledge my co-chairs, Peter and Xavier, for many enjoyable and stimulating phone calls. So welcome. I think it's going to be a wonderful session. I hope that we will come away from this with new ideas about collaboration. My bet is that we will. So I look forward to a wonderful meeting.
Thank you so much, Hal, and everybody. I think we have a patient perspective as well, Hal, to introduce.
Sure. So a few years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting a young man in the context of clinical care. His name is Zachery Burger. At that time, Zach was developing his interests and future career plans. Ultimately, he attended Brown University and chose to come work with us in the lab during summers. Zach has now completed college and is working in the lab on vascular EDS for an extended period of time. And you know, Zach also has vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so we thought he'd be an ideal person to share some perspectives on from a patient perspective, but also on the process of engaging in research. So I think you'll enjoy hearing Zach. Zach, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
There he is.
So I would like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to share my personal experience with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I don't remember being diagnosed. I was only 3 years old when my dad and I were both informed that we had this disorder. But I do remember the first appointment that we got exciting news. I remember my doctor's excited face when she told us that they finally made a mouse model of the disease and that had been holding up research for quite some time. Especially it was a huge obstacle in exploring therapeutic strategies. And I remember feeling so much more optimistic after hearing that, even though at the time I don't believe I truly understood the severity of the disease. It took me a while to end up Googling it because my parents really tried to keep the more severe details away from me. I also think that knowing the mouse model existed, it made me think that a cure was kind of just around the corner. So as you can imagine, you know, I kind of felt a little disappointing every time I went back to my appointment and there was never any more news. It was nothing more than we still have the mouse model. It was really frustrating to see everything happening so slowly, but granted, at the time I was really ignorant of the research process. In a way, I felt pretty helpless and it really bothered me. I had a thirst for answers and I knew I was capable of helping find those answers. This led me in college to reach out to Dr. Dietz to see how I could get involved. And I can't explain how exciting it was to see these mice for the first time after hearing about them for so long. But the mouse facility was a lot less grandiose than the one I had conjured up in my head. It was even more exciting to see a drug trial with remarkable survival in a mouse model of VEDS. And after seeing that, I was really hooked. Obviously, people with vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome want to find a treatment strategy backed by scientific evidence, but we also have a lot of other questions. For me personally, I wanted to know what sorts of exercise I could do, and unfortunately, the clinical recommendation is largely based on theory. So I joined my high school golf team with the blessing of my specialist. And in Michigan, the snow tends to stick around for quite some time, a giant chunk of the spring sports season. So the golf team would do weight training. And it was made very clear to me that if I was to do any weight training at all, that it had to be done with very low weights. And the coaches also required me to attend the weight training if I wanted to be a part of a team. So as you can imagine, for the kid lifting maybe 10 pounds maximum, next to all of these athletes lifting a ton of weight, it didn't really go over well for me. I was teased pretty heavily, called names, and kids would laugh and ask, why are you lifting so little? And I would tell them why. I have this disorder, I'm not supposed to. And I really don't think they understood what I was saying. And maybe that's because I didn't look sick and they just didn't believe me, or I really don't know. But I also remember rolling my eyes and thinking, you're weight training for a sport that, the only time you're going to break a sweat is when you're walking from hole to hole up a hill and it's probably pretty hot outside. And no offense to any golfers, I still play golf. It's a great sport, but anyway. It also makes me wonder how physicians can incorporate other potential implications patients might experience based on their recommendations. I also think it highlights why recommendations should be evidence-based. There are consequences to these recommendations. I'm also really excited to share some data on exercise from the DEEPS lab later this morning. And lastly, I would like to thank all of you for lending your minds and your time to further our understanding of this disease and to get the answers that patients have been longing for quite some time. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. So are we ready to get into the first session?
Yes, we are. And I'm just going to remind everybody, please, if you would take a moment and make sure that you can check that your full name is listed on your little Zoom window. That would be extremely helpful for us. We do have 103 people now on the call. So if you could just take a moment, right-click your video or your name and make sure that it is your full name, that will be supremely helpful when we need to call on you for questions. And I'll hand it back over to you, Hal. Thank you.